Hey guys, tonight we step into ancient Rome, not the marble statues and toga-wrapped senators, but the smoky, flour-dusted back streets where the real magic happens. You're up before the sun, walking through narrow alleys that still cling to the chill of the night. The air smells faintly of ashes, old bread, and the damp stone of centuries. Somewhere ahead, a faint glow pulses. The bakeries are about to wake up. And you, lucky you, have decided to spend your night watching men who work harder before sunrise than most people do all week. You probably won't survive this shift, but at least you'll smell incredible afterward. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location and the local time down below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle closer to a small bakery wedged between a public bathhouse and a butcher's stall. The city's heartbeat is slow, almost lazy. A mule cart rattles over the cobbles, delivering grain sacks marked with faint Latin letters, probably from Egypt, maybe from Sicily. Historians still argue whether Rome imported more wheat from North Africa or from its own Italian fields. Either way, these sacks carry the empire's bloodline. Inside, the baker's workshop is half-shadowed, lit by the dull orange of the banked oven. The walls are streaked with soot, the floor sprinkled with flour like snow. You can almost taste the air, warm, dense, faintly sweet from yesterday's crusts. A young apprentice yawns, scratching his head with a hand dusted in dough. He looks about 12, but he's already spent more hours kneading than you've spent scrolling through your phone today. The master baker grunts something about timing. He's missing half his teeth and wears a tunic stiff with flour. You watch as he plunges both hands into a trough of dough, turning it over like wet sand. The rhythm is hypnotic. Push, fold, twist, sigh. Somewhere a rooster crows, completely unaware that it's about to become part of someone's breakfast stew. The work begins before the city even breathes. You can hear the muffled voices of nearby taverns closing down, the last drunk staggering home as the bakers start their shift. It's a kind of eternal relay. One group's hangover is another's alarm clock. In ancient Rome, bakeries were often attached to mills powered by donkeys or slaves walking in endless circles, grinding wheat into flour. You step closer to one of these contraptions, a massive stone wheel turning with slow, heavy grace. The donkey's eyes are half-lidded, resigned to another day of existential circles. You can't help but wonder whether it dreams of open fields or just more circles. A fringe detail some historians still chuckle over. Archaeologists found fossilized loaves in Pompeii, perfectly preserved by volcanic ash. Each loaf was stamped with the bakery's mark, like an early version of brand identity. You imagine these bakers grumbling about competitors stealing their stamp designs. "That's my crust pattern, Gaius!" By the time the dough rises, the streets are lightening to gray. The baker signals to the apprentice, who runs outside with a wooden peel as long as your arm. Together, they check the oven. It's a monstrous dome built of brick and lined with volcanic stone. Ingenious, really, because it holds heat like a stubborn argument. The fires are fed with olive branches and bits of old furniture because wood in Rome was scarce and expensive. The master mutters about temperature. Too hot and the loaves blacken, too cool and they stay pale, which apparently counts as a personal insult to Jupiter himself. You watch as he leans in close, squinting at the embers, reading them like an old friend's mood. The city around you begins to wake. Vendors calling, dogs barking, the faint clang of metal from a nearby blacksmith. And yet, the baker's world remains its own bubble of rhythm and heat. You feel a strange comfort in it, this ancient dance of work before the world even starts complaining. You notice a niche in the wall, a tiny shrine with a sooty statue of Vesta, goddess of the hearth. Someone's left a few crumbs there, a humble offering. It's oddly touching, like leaving cookies for Santa, but with divine tax exemptions. There's a calm before the chaos, a thin slice of silence as the dough rests. You take a breath and realize the room has grown warmer, the air thicker. The fire crackles softly, And for a moment, you forget what century you're in. Because right here, in this dim Roman bakery, surrounded by sweat, smoke, and rising bread, you're exactly where history still smells alive. The dough was finally ready, soft and elastic beneath the baker's calloused hands. You stand there, watching the rhythm of kneading. It's almost meditative, like an ancient form of yoga with more carbs involved. Each man knows his role, each motion practiced through years of sleepy repetition. The older bakers grunt with experience. The younger one still glances at them, trying to match the tempo. The ovens now roar at full heat, glowing red-orange, humming with that deep animal sound fire makes when it's fed too well. The baker's arms gleam with sweat under the flicker of the flames. There's something heroic about the way he leans in to slide the loaves inside, even though his tunic is singed at the hem. You'd think he was performing a sacred ritual, and, in a way, he is. You lean against a wall dusted with flour. The place smells like toast, smoke, and a hint of yesterday's fatigue. A faint chatter fills the air, gossip, petty complaints, the currency of early mornings. You hear one baker grumble that the grain's coarser than last week's. Another swears that the water from the Tiber ruins the dough. There's always something to blame. Sometimes the heat, sometimes the gods, and sometimes, inevitably, the government. Historians still argue whether Rome's bakers were free tradesmen or more like state-controlled servants. The truth probably lies somewhere in the sticking middle. Bread wasn't just food, it was politics. The city's rulers knew that if people ever ran out of it, riots would boil faster than the porridge. Bread and circuses, the saying went, keep the people fed and entertained, and they won't ask too many questions about taxes. You imagine a meeting of imperial officials debating yeast content. Gentlemen, the mob demands fluffier loaves. It's absurd and somehow completely believable. At the back of the bakery, a miller named Felix is covered head to toe in flour, like a ghost of gluten past. He hums tunelessly while adjusting the grinding wheel. "Every stone has its mood," he tells you, tapping the mill like it's a stubborn pet. You nod, pretending to understand. He grins, revealing teeth as uneven as ancient cobblestones, and says, "It's like people. Some grind smooth, some resist." Philosophical guy, for someone who spends his life turning circles. Then there's Cassia, the baker's wife. She sweeps in carrying a basket of olives and cheese, all sharp smells and sharper glances. She's been up since before the bakers, managing the household and making sure nobody burns down her investment. Her husband jokes about the good old days when men ran everything, and she laughs the kind of laugh that ends arguments. A quirky historical tidbit you might enjoy: some Roman bakeries doubled as taverns. Bread and beer, history's longest love story. Patrons could buy loaves hot from the oven and wash them down with something brewed in the back room. If Starbucks had been around, this would have been their first franchise model. The apprentice burns his hand on the oven peel, yelping. The baker rolls his eyes, but doesn't scold him too harshly. Instead, he mutters something about earning scars the honest way. You can't help but think ancient Rome had no workers' comp. The gossip keeps rolling. One man swears that a senator's mistress has been seen buying cheap bread instead of the fancy kind. She must be cursed, he declares. Another claims that flour prices will rise because pirates are raiding grain ships again. Pirates! Even 2,000 years ago, there were supply chain issues. Somewhere, a logistics manager from the future is silently weeping. A few minutes later, the smell changes. The first loaves are done. The baker pulls one out, taps its crust, and nods approvingly. The sound is hollow, perfect.
He breaks it open, and a cloud of fragrant steam rushes out. You feel it on your face. Warm, yeasty, alive. He tosses you a piece, and you bite in. It's chewy, rustic, and slightly smoky from the olive branch fire. You'd pay extra for this at a modern cafe. He says, "Don't tell anyone, but we mix yesterday's dough into today's batch. Makes it rise better." He's right. It's the world's first sourdough starter. History is full of accidents that turned into art. As you chew, someone cracks a joke about Jupiter being the god of gluten, and laughter ripples through the room. It's weary laughter, but real. These men live between exhaustion and absurdity. The oven roars again, the heat pressing like a blanket. A sudden argument breaks out near the doorway, two bakers shouting about flour weights. One accuses the other of skimming off a handful for himself. You half expect a rolling pin to become a weapon, but Cassia intervenes, hands on hips, radiating the kind of authority that could silence a stadium. The men grumble, apologize, and return to their dough. Crisis averted. Through the open door, sunlight begins to spill across the floor. The world outside is now fully awake, vendors shouting, carts squealing, children laughing. But inside this flour-dusted den, time seems to move differently. You glance at the bakers, their movements steady, almost ritualistic. They've done this every day for generations. You think back to that shrine in the corner, the goddess of the hearth watching it all. Maybe, in some quiet way, she blesses these mornings of toil and gossip, of burns and laughter. Because even in the empire that conquered the world, someone still had to make breakfast.
The sun climbs higher, and with it, the bakery transforms from cozy warmth to something closer to a sauna made of brick and regret. You wipe your forehead, well, you would if you were actually here, and watch as the bakers move slower, their tunics damp, their patience thinner than phyllo. The oven's fire crackles like it knows it's in charge now. The air grows thick with heat and noise. The city outside hums in full daylight, merchants shouting prices, donkey hooves clopping, the faint splash of a fountain somewhere down the street. But inside the bakery, it's a different world. Blinding, smoky, shimmering. You can almost hear the heat itself breathing. The morning rush has passed. Loaves have gone out in baskets to markets, taverns, and villas. Some will feed senators, others slaves, and most people who couldn't care less who made their bread as long as it's crusty. You lean back against a wall and feel the radiating warmth through the stones. It's not unpleasant exactly, just relentless. And this, dear listener, is when the Roman baker's day enters its legendary phase, the long, unapologetic lunch break. The kind of break that modern office workers dream of, but only get if Wi-Fi collapses. The apprentice wipes sweat off his chin with a flour-dusted sleeve. "We rest now," he says, as if declaring a divine decree. The baker nods in solemn agreement, tossing his peel aside like a soldier laying down his weapon. You follow them into the courtyard behind the shop, blinking at the sudden light. It's bright, blinding actually, and the air smells of warm grain and donkey fur. Someone's roasting onions nearby. The aroma floats lazily between you. The men sprawl on benches, crates, even directly on sacks of flour. It's their version of deck chairs. Cassia reappears, carrying a jug of watered wine and a platter of olives, cheese, and yesterday's bread, now toasted and rubbed with garlic. They eat slowly, deliberately, as if every bite needs negotiation. Conversation drifts easily, half jokes, half philosophy. "The emperor should ban summer," one mutters, and everyone nods gravely. Another swears that bread dough rises faster if you sing to it,
which immediately sparks a chorus of off-key humming. A mainstream fact you might enjoy slides naturally in here. Roman workdays typically began at sunrise and ended around noon. The rest of the day, those long golden afternoons, belonged to rest, meals, and gossip. Productivity, it seems, wasn't exactly their favorite god. You stretch out under an olive tree, watching heat waves shimmer above the rooftops. Time softens around the edges. The donkey from the mill snorts lazily, finally off the clock, too. Somewhere in the distance, a public crier announces something about taxes, and nobody listens. The baker tilts his head toward you. "You know," he says between bites, "we make more than bread here. We make patience." You chuckle, but he's serious. He gestures toward the city. "They think Rome runs on gold, marble, and soldiers. But if bread stops," he snaps his fingers, "everything stops." Historians still argue whether bakers were ever granted special privileges or just tolerated because the empire couldn't function without them. Either way, you can tell they knew their worth. The apprentice dozes off mid-chew, crumbs on his chin. Cassia covers him with a spare cloth and says, "Let him sleep. He'll be back at it before long." You find yourself half asleep too, lulled by the murmurs, the rhythmic drone of cicadas, and the distant chatter of the marketplace. The whole world seems to be melting into one long sigh. The air shimmers. Even shadows seem too lazy to move. Then someone laughs, a sudden, loud bark of amusement. It's Felix, the flour-dusted philosopher. He's telling a ridiculous story about a senator who tried to bake his own bread for a dinner party. "He forgot the salt," Felix wheezes. "Fed it to his guests anyway. Half of them pretended to like it. That's Rome for you, so polite it hurts." You laugh quietly, imagining a marble-pillared kitchen filled with nervous slaves and one humiliated senator tasting failure. Cassia, meanwhile, has started slicing a melon with the precision of a general. "You all talk too much," she says, handing you a piece. It's sweet, cooling, a perfect reprieve from the heat. You bite into it, and for a moment, the entire world narrows to the taste of sun and juice. A quirky tidbit slips in naturally here. Some wealthy Romans had their bakers live inside their estates, with separate quarters built near private ovens. Imagine being on call 24/7 to make midnight snacks for someone's spoiled cousin. You can almost hear the ghost of an ancient baker groaning, "You want focaccia at what hour?" By mid-afternoon, the courtyard falls quiet. The men lie in half-sleep, arms flung wide, breathing slow. Even the donkey seems to nap. The only sounds are the soft crackle of the dying fire and the occasional pop of cooling bread crusts from inside the shop. The city's chaos fades into background hum, the faint echo of chariots, laughter from taverns, and the constant song of summer air. You realize you've drifted somewhere between dream and memory, halfway between modern exhaustion and ancient leisure. The bakery hums softly in your mind, a warm, timeless loop of effort and rest, like the heartbeat of a civilization that never truly slept, just took very long lunch breaks.
You wake, or at least you think you do, to the sound of someone snoring nearby. It's a gentle, steady rhythm, almost musical. The air has shifted, the worst heat has passed, replaced by a heavy, drowsy warmth. A few lazy flies circle a bowl of leftover olives. The bakers are scattered around the courtyard like exhausted heroes after a battle fought with dough instead of swords. The apprentice stirs first, stretching his arms and blinking at the sun as if surprised it still exists. "Time to get up," he mumbles, but no one moves. Cassia just smirks and hands him a cup of watered wine. "Drink," she says. "You'll be faster at pretending to work." It's the golden lull of the Roman afternoon, that blurry edge between waking and dreaming, where everything feels slower, softer, and just a little surreal. You watch as one of the bakers lazily shapes leftover dough into tiny animals, a snake, a fish, something vaguely resembling a donkey. He sets them on a tray and slides it into the warm oven's edge, where they puff into strange, misshapen creatures. A small art form, born out of boredom and bread. Historians still argue whether Roman bakers did such idle things, or if this is merely the kind of detail time invents to make the past seem charming. But doesn't it feel true? A man who kneads dough all day surely dreams in shapes and crusts. The baker stretches, his back popping audibly, and mutters, "We should have been poets." Felix replies without opening his eyes, "We are poets, we just work in flour." You can't tell if that's wisdom or dehydration talking, but it's strangely beautiful. There's a fringe story some scholars whisper about, how one baker, in a fit of pride, supposedly challenged a sculptor to see whose art would last longer. The sculptor carved a statue. The baker baked a loaf shaped like the same figure. Both are long gone now, of course, but legend insists that for years afterward, people debated which was more impressive, marble or bread that looked like marble. You imagine a group of Romans standing in the sun, solemnly sniffing a loaf of heroic proportions. Cassia shakes her head at the lot of them and goes back inside, probably to prepare for the evening round. She hums a tune under her breath, something simple, something ancient. And you can't help but feel like she's the real heartbeat of this place. The men may bake, but she's the reason the rhythm holds. Inside, the bakery has cooled slightly. The ovens are still warm, but now they glow with a softer, gentler light. You run your hand along the rough brick wall. It's smooth in places where generations have leaned, waiting for loaves to rise. You can almost hear the ghosts of their small complaints and laughter echoing through time. Felix joins you, carrying a tray of bread animals. "Here," he says, handing you one that looks vaguely like a lion with arthritis. "A masterpiece." You bite into it. It's crunchy, dry, and somehow endearing. He laughs. He laughs and says, "Art is supposed to make you think," shrugging. There are few customers wander in. Women with baskets, a soldier on leave, a child clutching a few coins. The baker greets them all by name. There's comfort in familiarity. In this city of noise and empire, the bakery is a constant, a small promise that life continues no matter who's in power. Someone brings up politics. Always a mistake. "Did you hear," one man says, lowering his voice, "that the emperor's cook got caught selling grain to taverns?" Everyone leans closer. Another baker snorts. "Of course he did. If I worked for that man, I'd steal his salt too." You realize gossip is the true yeast of this city. It keeps everything bubbling, expanding, feeding on air and curiosity. The apprentice interrupts, asking why bread cracks on top. The master explains that it's because the crust forms faster than the inside can rise. He says, "Like people, they look fine on the outside, while everything inside is still a mess." There's a pause. Then someone laughs, softly, knowingly. The day drifts on. The light turns honey-colored, spilling through the open doorway in lazy stripes. Dust motes dance in it, and the air smells of cooling crusts and faint smoke. You feel time loosen its grip entirely. A small philosophical debate arises, something about whether bread or politics truly sustains Rome. Felix argues for bread, naturally. He says, "Politics fills mouths with promises. Bread fills them with something real." The baker chuckles. "And yet both go stale too quickly." They laugh, and you do too, because somehow
2,000 years later, that line still works. The first stars begin to appear, faint and uncertain in the pinkening sky. The baker lights a small oil lamp and sets it near the oven. Its flame dances gently, reflected in the bits of metal tools hanging from the wall. The air cools further, and the world outside grows quieter, shops closing, sandals shuffling homeward, voices softening into evening tones. You realize that this is the hour when exhaustion becomes tenderness, when work transforms from survival into ritual, when even the humblest labor starts to sound like poetry. You watch as the baker shapes the last loaf of the day, pressing his thumb gently into the top. He says, "For luck." And for a moment, you believe him completely.
Evening settles over Rome like a warm loaf cooling under linen. The light fades from gold to copper, then to the soft blue of surrender. You're still there, in that flour-dusted workshop, watching as the bakers finish their day's quiet symphony. The fire in the oven glows low now, more ember than flame, breathing out a steady pulse of warmth that makes the air shimmer. The apprentice is sweeping crumbs into a basket. "For the pigeons," he says, though you suspect it's just an excuse to avoid cleaning faster. Cassia counts coins from the day's sales, small clinks that sound like punctuation in the silence. Felix hums again, the same tuneless tune from earlier, and you realize it's his way of marking time, a little thread of music holding the day together. You step outside for a moment. The street is calmer now. Market stalls are closing, shutters drawn. The smell of smoke from cooking fires drifts through the air, blending with traces of olive oil, sweat, and river breeze. Somewhere far off, laughter bursts from a tavern, brief, bright, then gone. Rome after sunset feels softer, but never fully quiet. The stones remember too much noise to stay still. You walk a short distance, passing a public fountain where a few women rinse vegetables. One of them hums a lullaby. You can't help but smile. It sounds almost like Cassia's tune, as if the entire city hums in harmony when no one's looking. When you return, the bakers are stacking cooling racks, the loaves resting like tired soldiers after a long campaign. Some are round and perfect, others cracked and uneven. The baker inspects each with the seriousness of a philosopher grading essays. "This one's moody," he mutters, tapping a misshapen loaf. "Probably thought too hard while rising." A mainstream fact drifts gently into your thoughts. Archaeological remains show that bakeries like this one once produced bread on an industrial scale. In Pompeii alone, over 30 public bakeries have been uncovered, their ovens still intact. The bread from those ovens fed entire neighborhoods, proof that these humble craftsmen powered an empire. Cassia sets aside a few loaves for tomorrow's markets. "Always leave a start for the next day," she says, her tone soft but firm. "That's how you keep life going." She could be talking about dough, or marriage, or the whole Roman world. Historians still argue whether bakers like these were content in their trade or trapped by it. You can't decide either. There's pride in their craft, but also resignation. The understanding that bread, no matter how perfect, always disappears by morning. And yet they keep baking. You suppose there's something quietly heroic about that. The baker leans on his wooden peel and looks toward the doorway where dusk now pools. "Tomorrow," he says, "we start again. Before the roosters, before the sun, before anyone else wakes." You nod. There's nothing else to say. He laughs suddenly, a low, tired laugh. "You know what I envy? Not senators or generals, the donkeys. They get to walk in circles and never think about anything." Felix grins. "You already do that, old man." Laughter fills the shop again, easy and unforced. A quirky tidbit sneaks in as you watch them banter. Some ancient Romans flavored bread with poppy seeds or honey, or even mixed in bits of cheese for feasts. One baker in Ostia was famous for a honey loaf shaped like the sun. You wonder if tonight's baker ever tried something similar, maybe once, when he was young and ambitious, before he learned that feeding Rome leaves little room for experiments. You glance toward the oven one last time. Its glow is softer now, like the heartbeat of something alive, but fading toward sleep. The last loaf is out. The peel rests against the wall. The tools hang neatly in their places, each coated with a thin sheen of flour that gleams in the lamplight. The apprentice yawns, stretching until his back cracks. "I'll never get up tomorrow," he says. Cassia smiles. "You always say that." The baker takes a small piece of bread, still warm, and places it beside the shrine to Vesta in the corner. "For the fire that doesn't die," he murmurs. You feel the weight of that line settle somewhere deep. It's not just about the oven's flame. It's about endurance, continuity, the human stubbornness to create warmth in a cold world. Outside, night thickens. The sounds of the city become muffled, like someone pulling a heavy blanket over everything. A stray dog barks once. Then silence. You stand there a moment longer, watching the last flicker of fire, listening to the rhythm of quiet breaths and creaking wood. And then finally, even the embers give up their light.
The world feels softer now, like the dough before it meets the oven. You let your eyes close a little, imagining the glow of those Roman ovens fading into the dark. The city above them continues to murmur, fountains, footsteps, distant songs, but here, in the warm hush of the bakery, everything slows. You picture the loaves cooling on the wooden racks, the last traces of heat escaping into the air. The scent lingers, a blend of smoke, salt, and something sweeter, something ancient. Maybe it's the smell of comfort itself. The bakers have gone home. The courtyard is empty except for the soft sway of olive branches and the faint hum of night insects. Somewhere, the donkey shifts in its sleep, dreaming its endless circles. You imagine the baker's hands, rough but gentle, folding dough with the same care someone might give to a child. You think of Cassia humming while she closes the shutters. You think of the apprentice, already dreaming of tomorrow's sunrise, unaware he'll yawn the same way, complain the same way, and love it all the same. The oven's ashes settle like snow. The air cools. The world feels held, unhurried. You breathe in once more, slow, deep, content. And in that breath, you realize the story hasn't ended. Somewhere, in some quiet kitchen, the same rhythm continues. Hands kneading, fires glowing, hearts finding peace in the repetition. Let yourself rest in that thought. The day is done. The bread is baked. The city sleeps. And so should you.